Patreon.com/the Walk-Off Podcast. $4 a month gets you in there.
When it comes to transactions, obviously they've slowed down outside of the international free agency that just happened. The heavy lifting for most teams has been done, but there are still some quality free agents out there that could truly help baseball teams that are still in need. When you look at the Toronto Blue Jays, who have you heard name-wise that is attached to them? And if you can't get specific with names, then logically, who would fit with some of their still pending needs?
Yeah, this is a team that I think could use a reliever on a minor league deal, high upside reliever. Um, we've seen names like Alex Reyes mentioned as
Mhm.
possibilities. I think that could be interesting, especially on a minor league deal if you're not giving up the 40-man spot. I think rotation depth is a question still for this team. Drew Hutchison obviously picked up along with the waiver claim from Pittsburgh. So, there's some ways to add a little bit of insurance there behind the starting 5 or 6, including Yusei Kikuchi and Mitch White in that group. But at the same time, there's certainly they could benefit from more starting pitching. And I think on the position player side, they probably have 12 spots spoken for if everyone's healthy at this point. And then that 13th spot on the position player roster, likely, does that go to a Nathan Lucas at this point if the season were to start? Lefty hitting outfielder with options remaining.
Mhm.
That's not the most exciting or established option. So, is there a way to get a right-hand hitting outfielder? Someone, again, is this a minor league deal? Maybe it's a switch hitter. Maybe it's not a right-handed hitter. But now that they've added the 3 left-handed hitters in Varsho, Kiermaier, and Belt, there's probably a case to be made for adding a bit of balance there.
Adam Duvall and Robbie Grossman just seem to be the names that keep popping up. And I don't know if it's just that their bats and their splits make sense. But what have you heard of them, and do you think there is a fit there if the team could come to agreement?
Well, with Grossman, he's a good player, does a lot of things well, and the Jays did check on him earlier in the offseason. Um, at the same time, if you're Robbie Grossman or Adam Duvall and you're looking at the Jays right now, I mean, logically, you can tell yourself, okay, George Springer and Kevin Kiermaier, maybe they haven't been the most healthy. Or Brandon Belt, same thing. I can see a path to DH or outfield playing time, but it's not immediately available. So
Mhm.
if you're those guys, I think one hurdle for the Blue Jays in trying to sign a player of that amount of pedigree, someone as established as those guys, is the path to playing time is not immediately there. Now, one injury would change things, or if you're signing someone with a little bit less of a track record, then you bring them in. They have to prove it. They understand that it's a bit of a different equation. But at this point, the depth chart is full. You have 3 outfielders. You have 2 DHs in Kirk or Jansen plus Belt. It's not a place where an established player is necessarily going to look. So I think even though the Jays talked to Grossman, I'm not sure that that's a situation I'd expect to see develop in the next couple of weeks.
Just circling back to Alex Reyes, what are the chances that he's at a point where he would sign a minor league deal? Is that what the holdup in him signing is? Because I know that he's getting interest from numerous teams.
Yeah, I would think at minimum a minor league deal is going to be available to him with some really good incentives. I'm not privy to exactly what the
Mhm.
offers are. I'm not sure. But it would be his reps definitely would be doing a good job if they get him a major league deal. And conversely, if a team is able to pick him up on a minor league deal risk free, I mean that's a great move that I think all 30
Yeah.
teams would probably want to do.
Is there anybody, and I know you already mentioned Nathan Lucas, is there anybody from within this organization, a prospect that you can see making and contributing to this team in 2023?
For sure. And I think there always are. Whether that's a Spencer Horowitz, whether that's an Addison Barger, they're guys who are pushing their way up closer to the major leagues. For the Jays, they haven't necessarily developed a ton of outfielders in the last few seasons, which is probably why we saw so much focus there in the last couple off seasons, trying to get, whether it's Springer, whether it's Varsho, whether it's Kiermaier, trying to reinforce things. Grichuk, of course, acquired in a trade. Tapia acquired in a trade. They've tried
Mhm.
to go outside the organization to fill in at the outfield. But I think, broadly speaking, Horowitz and Barger are probably a couple of the position player names to watch. Where on the pitching side, obviously the big name people are looking at is Ricky Tiedemann.
Spencer Horowitz can play a little left field, right? I know he's primarily a first baseman.
Yeah, my sense is that you're talking about a corner guy. I am looking forward to watching him a bit more in spring training and get a sense of how realistic, it is for him to add a bit of versatility. But yeah, on paper that makes a certain amount of sense.
It's interesting with both Horowitz and Barger because there's been so much talk about lefty bats, and now they're kind of at a point where, you know what, a righty might be a better fit.
It's wild, right? Like it really
Yeah.
shifts pretty fast. We've gotten so used, like ever since the 14, 15, 16 Jays of, Edwin, Batista, Donaldson, they were
Mm-hmm.
such a right-handed heavy team, and that worked really well for them. And then now it's Bo and Vlad and Springer and Kirk. They really do have a righty heavy team once again. And that can work, but now it's started to shift where, the tide is definitely turning to the left at this point.
Varsho and Belt, they're going to help balance this lineup substantially, right? Probably more than most fans think it will.
Yeah, I mean, with Varsho, I think there's a pretty high degree of certainty that you're going to get a lot of production, definitely defensively, what he was able to show last year. He can do a lot offensively where he can connect
Mm-hmm.
with some high velocity fastballs. He can drop down a bunt single. I think he's a pretty safe bet to be an average to above average hitter for 600 plate appearances, which is a lot easier said than done. So that's a big addition to this lineup. I think with Belt, what we saw in 2020 and 2021 from him was really good production.
Mm-hmm.
That would be great. The Jays would be
Middle of the
thrilled.
order production, you could
Oh
say.
yeah,
Yeah.
29 homers, right? In I think it was about 97 games for Belt in 21. So I mean, that's incredible production. At the same time, like let's see how this knee responds to,
Mm-hmm.
he's showing up in spring. He says he feels great. That's awesome. That's step one. Now, how does it work after, he's played 4 games in a row? And what does day game after a night game look like for him? How does it work on the turf? I mean, these are all questions. He's going to be DHing, so the turf is probably less of an issue for him than it would be for someone like Kiermaier. But it's not a given for a guy who's 34 years old. And the Jays would clearly believe that he's capable of doing better than he did in 2022. And I don't think that's a huge leap of faith either. I think there are reasons to believe that that's possible. But yeah, I mean, it's a question. It is a question what he can bring.